record. Okay, we are holding on, let's see. Oh, let's get Alan here. Hi, Al. 1 second. Hi, Alan. How are you? We're just beginning over here.
Okay, Scott.
And then we just mentioned that we're ready. This is 20% through Shas today. So if you're, so thank God we made it this far. Okay. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so let us begin.
You can do more than Chumash. You're allowed to do more than Chumash.
That's right. Chumash is a milestone. Okay, we are holding exactly over here. We are Daf Ayin Tes Amud Sheni Ela Mahacha, which is about 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Very simple. We know that the shiur of eating on Yom Kippur. What is the shiur of eating on Yom Kippur? That you get kares is the kesebes, the date with the pit. Okay, that's what we're discussing. So why the date? Why not a kazayas? So we learned before yesterday that the reason is because the Torah does not say don't eat on Yom Kippur. The Torah says don't have your mind unsettled. You know, he wants you to be, so to speak, stressed out on Yom Kippur. And therefore, the Chazal said, the Rabbanan knew that, you know, when you're hungry, you get angry. The chemicals, the hormones are raging. So, but if you
they call it hangry.
Hangry. Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I cortisol or the adrenaline, pumps. So if you eat a date, if you eat a kazayas just the size of an olive, then you're not going to be relaxed. Your mind is not going to get settled. It's only if you eat a date, that's when your mind will settle down. That's chazal. That question now becomes, how big is a date? Is a date bigger? It's bigger than an olive. So that's olive is the minimum shiur of things in the Torah. But where does the date fall in? Is it greater than an egg, a beitza, or is it less than an egg? So we had a machlokes yesterday. Rav Zvid said Kesoiva Sagasa is a little bit less than the size of an egg. A date is less than an egg. On Amud Aleph, we had Rabbi Yehuda says Kesoiva Sagasa is greater than an egg. Okay, so that is the machlokes. Comes along, and this concludes it. Who's going to be correct? Rav Zvid, that it's going to be less than an egg. And what does Rav Zvid prove it? From this following brisa. The brisa says, Ela Mahacha. The brisa, this will prove it. We find in halacha that to bench at kamno mezamnin, how much do you have to eat to make a zimun and also bench? That's basically it. How much does a person have to eat to be mechai birkas hamazon? And this is only drabanan, even though it seems that they're darshaning it from a pasuk. But so the first opinion is at kazayis. If you eat a kazayis, an olive's worth of bread, you have to bench. Divrei Rab Meir. Rabbi Yehuda omer at kebetza. You have to eat the egg size. Okay. Now, but my palki, what is the argument all about? Rab Meir Sava, Rab Meir holds, the Torah says, V'chalta v'savata uveirachta. So v'chalta means you should eat, ziachila, means you should eat. V'savata means zushtia, you have to drink. V'achila b'kazayas, and eating is with the kazayas. What Rab Meir holds, in order to be mechayiv birchas hamazon, you have to eat an olive size of bread plus drink. Because when the Torah says v'savata, you should be full, the Torah means that along with eating, you have to drink something. So eating and drinking, and then you have an obligation to bench. But the eating is kazayas. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda and he says, no. He says you don't even have to drink. V'chalta v'savata means the Torah is telling you, achila sheyesh ba savia. You have to eat a type of eating that will make you feel full, somewhat full. Now, the Ezazah, what would make you feel full? Zekabeya. If you eat the size of an egg, you feel full. Maybe for a minute you'll feel full, but you'll have that feeling of fullness with an egg. So says Rabbi Yehuda. So now, says the Gemara, very simple logic. If you want to say, the date is greater than an egg, that means that the reason a date is something that relaxes your mind, puts you at ease, and that size is greater than an egg. Wait a second. You just told me hashta beya, an egg, sabui misaba, makes you feel full. It would not make you feel relaxed. It wouldn't relax your mind. If an egg makes you feel full, then it certainly relaxes your mind. So a date, it cannot be a higher shear than that, because that's the pinnacle. You feel full and your mind is relaxed. So that the highest shear of possibility must be an egg. So here you can prove keseves agasa, the date, the thick date, she'amru, that the Chachamim said on Yom Kippur is pachos mekabeya, is less than an egg. So therefore, this is the rule. Kabeya, if you eat an egg, masba'ah, you get full. You feel that satiation. But keseves miyasvadaita. But if you just eat a date, you don't really feel full, but your mind is put at ease. And therefore, you don't have the hormones rushing to your brain. So that's where the Gemara ends and proves that a date is the medium share, somewhere in between an olive and an egg. New Gemara. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. We learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Yomer. Rabbi says, let's go to Tes Peyom et Aleph. Kol hashiurin kulam begazayis. All shiurim are with a kazayis. What does that mean? Let's say you have to eat matzah. The shear is with a kazayis. That's egg. Chutz, except mitumas oichlin. From food becoming tamei. Let's say we know an item of food, if it touches, let's say, a sheretz, it becomes tamei. How big does that item of food, what's the size of that item of food in order for it to be mekabel tumah? And according to other Rishonim, to transmit tumah. And both transmit tumah and accept tumah, it's the size of an egg. It's the size of an egg, not an olive. Why? How do I know that? Sheshina hakosev b'mashma'on. The Torah changes its wording. And since the Torah changes its wording, v'shinu chachamim b'shiurim. Chachamim knew that it's not the size of an olive. Let's just look at this pasuk over here. The pasuk is over here. The Torah says right over here in my mikol oichel asher yoechel. Any food that you eat, as soon as it becomes water on it, it becomes yutma, becomes susceptible to tuma, and therefore it becomes, could be mitama, other things. So now the Torah uses an odd phraseology. It doesn't say food becomes susceptible to tuma. It says food that you eat, it becomes tamei. Why does the Torah say that you eat? It's referring to a different size. The Torah says that not just the size of an egg, it has to be bigger than that. It has to be the size of not the size of a zayis. It has to be the size of an egg. Uraya ledava Yom Kippur, and the same idea we find by Yom Kippur. Since the Torah did not say don't eat, the Chazal knew that it's not the same size of olive. How did the Torah change its normal language by Yom Kippur? The Torah wrote Miloi su'uneh. Whoever is not going to be stressed on Yom Kippur, he gets karetz. Su'uneh. The Torah doesn't say whoever eats on Yom Kippur. The Torah says whoever is not stressed out on Yom Kippur. So therefore, the Chachamim knew that the shi'ir of eating on Yom Kippur is greater than an olive. It must be another size up. How did the Chachamim change the shi'ur? Kekaseves, they changed it as a date. So what the Gemara just said, that just like by Yom Kippur, the Torah switched the language around, so Chazal switched the shi'ur. So also by Tumas Eichlin, since the Torah switched the language around, Chazal knew that you have to switch the shi'ur around. So the Gemara says, "My Raya Ledava Yom Kippurim." Why do I need Yom Kippur as a proof? I mean, the fact is that if the Torah changes the language, even without knowing that the Torah changed the language by Yom Kippur, I would have known automatically that Tumas Eichlin is larger than a kazayas. I don't have to bring a proof from Yom Kippur.
I was in the apartment next door today taking.
So the Gemara says, hold on. I'm just kidding. Okay. So the Gemara says, the ima hasam, if I just had the language by Tumas Eichlin, hava mina, I would have thought urcha de krahi, The Torah, that's the way the Torah writes. The Torah wrote this language. Look at the language again. The Torah wrote, "Mikol oichel ashiechel." Any food that you eat, and water came on it, so it becomes susceptible to tumah and could be metama. So obviously food is what you eat. So the Torah uses this language, but doesn't mean to highlight that something is different over here. But since the Torah already highlighted at times when it wants the shiur to be different, like by Yom Kippur, the Torah changes the language. So that is an indication that over here also, the fact that the Torah switched its language, the shiur is not the olive normal size, but the shiur must be a different size. And Chazal said that's an egg. So the Gemara says, so tumas oichlin kabeya minolan. How do you know tumas oichlin that becomes susceptible with an egg? How do they know it's the size of an egg? Maybe it's the size of a date. That's a good question, right? Amar Rababo, Amar Rabalaza, the Amakra. The pasuk says, listen to this. Mikol oichel asher yeochel. Any food that you eat becomes susceptible to tumah. So the drasha is any food coming from a food. How do you have a possibility of food coming from a food? A chicken laying an egg. Oichel haba machmas oichel. It's a food that comes from another food. It's the egg of a chicken. So that's how they knew it's the size of an egg. So the Gemara says, how do you know? Maybe the Torah says it has to be the size of a goat. A goat, a baby goat coming from a mother goat, is a food item. And therefore, maybe that's what the Torah meant. So the Gemara says that's not a food item that you can eat readily because mechusar shchita. The goat, the baby goat, you still have to slaughter it. An egg coming from a chicken, you could just eat it. So the Gemara says, "Ve'ema ben pekua." It's possibility. There is a possibility of an animal that does not require shchita. If the mother was slaughtered, and then they opened up the insides and they pulled out the baby gedi. That gedi does not need a shchita. That's called ben pekua. So it's possible to have an offspring from a goat that doesn't require shchita because the mother shchita will apply also for the offsprings.
Right, but then it didn't come out like it's saying it should come out from it. It came out through cutting it open, not
So
way.
who says it has to come out through the birthing womb? Maybe it comes out
Right.
through. So
And how do we know that it's just a chicken egg? There are others, aren't there other animals?
You're reading right through the Gemara. So first the Gemara answers this in Korea. Even a baby goat that comes out, you still can't eat it because you have to get rid of the blood. So you don't need to slaughter it, but you have to rip it open to drain it from the blood. So therefore, it's not a food that can be ready to be eaten. So now comes Steve's question. Maybe it's an ostrich egg or something like that. It's a very large egg. How do you know it's a small egg like a chicken's eggs? So the Gemara says tafasta meruba loy tafasta mua tafasta. It's a klal in the Gemara. If you have a choice, you're not sure what the shiur meant, you take the smaller shiur. The smaller shiur over here is the chicken egg. You don't take the larger size egg. That's a klal in the Gemara that, if you don't know if you're supposed to take $5 or $10, you take $5 because within $10 you could be getting it wrong. You could overhit.
Right.
But with
But people
$5,
eat fish eggs too.
what?
People eat fish eggs too, raw.
So the Gemara's next
Caviar.
question. That's the next Gemara's question. The Eima Beasa Ditziporta. You don't even have to go further. The Gemara says there's a baby bird, some birds that has, I don't know what Ditziporta means, another type of bird, the Zutertuva, that's very small. Maybe that's what it meant. Okay, so that's a good question. So the Gemara doesn't answer that question. So Rabbi Bo today, Omar, he had to resolve it in another way. How did you know that Tumas Oichlin is with an egg? Because the answer is any food that you can eat. Only food that can enter the throat and the esophagus at one time. So the Shi'aru Chachamim, the Chachamim estimated that by examining, I don't know, cadavers or whatever, that Ein Beis Abliya, the throat, cannot hold Machzik Yosim at Beitzes Tarnagoyles. more than a chicken egg, you can't get it down the throat. So that we call oichel asher yochel, any food that could be eaten at one shot, that's the sheer oichlin that could be makabel tuma. So that resolves how you learn that they knew it was an egg.
Bernard, I have a quick question. Wasn't there a question of the shiur that Moshe Rabbeinu had from Mehar Sinai, and then what the Chachamim came up with, a different the size of the beitza? What we learned about that?
Well, there's first of all, that's the discussion of today's Gemara. But Rebbe said, "Kol shiurim." Right, we're going to learn now that all these things are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. We also learned that it's possible that over time the size of eggs changed.
I see.
That's how these shiurim changed.
Right. So so basically their conclusion was the egg itself has to be able to go down the esophagus of the human.
Well, the conclusion was that how do I know that a food item the size of an egg is mekabel tuma, is susceptible to tuma? Because the Torah says mikol oichel asher echel. It has to be a food item that you can eat in one shot. Chazal measured the throat of a person, and I guess the esophagus, that ein beis hablia machzik yosem beitzes tarnagoyos. It cannot hold more than the size of a chicken's egg. So that is the shiur of oichel. That's how they. I see.
Okay.
Now, but look at Sheldon. The following Gemara will examine something about shiurim that may change over time through evolution. I'm not sure, but look what the Gemara says. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says, someone eats something not kosher, the fats nowadays. So, of course, if you eat fats like every good Jew should have, you should have a book that writes down your averis. So you shouldn't write down, Rabbi Loza says, that I did an aver of eating treifas today. You have to write down how much you ate. You have to write down, did you eat an egg? What size item do you eat? To understand what he's trying to say is like this. There are three types of olives over here. Let's take a look at this picture. There's the green olives. That's the medium-sized olive that we accept as the shiur. But then there's a small olive, like these small red olives. And then there's the larger olives, so they come in different sizes. But for the assumption of what's an olive that makes you chayiv, obligated to bring a carbon, if you did an avera, the green ones. So what the Gemara is saying now is, you have to write what type of olive did you eat. Even if you ate the green one, or let's say you ate the smallest one. Why? Let's say you ate the smallest one. So why would you write down that I ate a small olive? The chayra, I would never have to bring a carbon when the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built because I didn't eat the right shear. The answer is Shema Yavei Bezdin Acher. Maybe the next Bezdin in the time of Mashiach, what's the Bezdin going to do? The Yarbe B'Shiurim. They're going to say that the shiur is different. Well, the Gemara says, "Ma yarba b'shiurim." What does it mean that they're going to increase the shiur, or they're going to marba with shiurim? They're going to play around with the shiur. Are they going to say the mechayvi carbon akazayis katam, that you're obligated to bring a carbon even if you ate the smaller olive? So even if you eat a small olive and you think to yourself, "Well, I won't be mechayv a carbon," write down that you ate a small olive. Why? Because maybe when Mashiach comes, the Bezdin is going to decide, kazayas is the smaller item, is the smaller olive. For whatever reason, they're going to say that's the most common olive around. So you will be obligated to, you would be obligated to bring a carbon, although you ate a small kazayas. You ate the smaller version. So the Gemara says, hold it. Is that true? When you ate it, the Bezdin of our time, before Mashiach comes, says the medium olive is the real olive. And therefore, when you ate it, if you ate a small olive, right away, you didn't think you did anything wrong. So even if you did it by mistake, and then you find out, I ate a small olive, in your back of your mind, you think, I didn't do anything wrong. That potters you from a carbon. That tells you that you didn't do a carbon. You don't have to bring a carbon. So even if later on, 100 years later, when Mashiach comes and they build the Beis Hamikdash and they have the Bezdin says that the Kazayas Katan is that Kazayas Katan, you still would not have to bring a carbon. Because when you did it and then you realize you did something wrong, you didn't accept that you did something wrong, and therefore you're not obligated to bring a carbon. What Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Asher loy siyanaseh b'shugaga v'oshem. If you didn't do it, you didn't do it b'shgaga, you didn't do the mitzvahs of Hashem, and you did the avera b'shgaga by mistake, v'oshem, and then you found out you're guilty and you regret it. Shahashav miyadiyasei. If right when you find out you regret what you did, then eventually maybe carbon al shigagasa, you will bring a carbon for the mistake. Loishav miyadiyasei. But if you don't regret what you did, a maybe carbon al shigagasa, you don't bring a carbon on the mistake. So who cares if Bezin's going to change it to the smaller size? You still will not be obligated to bring the carbon because when you did it, you didn't regret doing it. When you found out that you did something wrong, you don't think you did anything wrong, and that obligates you for a carbon. So Ella deloy mechayve carbon ad ikzais gadol. The opposite case, that we are afraid that you're going to write down you ate a regular size olive. Write it down, because it could be that when Mashiach comes, they're going to say, that's not the olive that obligates you for a carbon. The big olive obligates you for a carbon. That means the larger ones obligate you for a carbon. If you only ate a small one, you should write it down. You ate a medium-sized one. You think you did something wrong. We are afraid that when Mashiach comes, they're going to say the larger one is the only ones that are obligated to bring a carbon. They'll make the shi'ur bigger, and therefore, by knowing, if you don't know what size you ate, you'll probably bring a carbon for nothing in the Azara, in the Beis Hamikdash. And really, according to that time, you'll be putter from bringing.
Is it normal for us to have retroactive type punishments? I mean, because what happens the opposite? What happens if, let's say, Tisha B'Av and you eat now and it's considered Nevera, but Mashiach comes and Tisha B'Av ended up that it's a Simcha and you're allowed to eat. So what happened to your Avera? It goes away because the status of a fast day changes?
It seems from this Gemara that it does. You ate the green one, the green olive. They said, oh no, the new carbon, in order to get atonement, you need to have eaten. In order to be considered something done wrong, you have to eat a kazayas gadol. So it could be maybe you'll turn out you didn't do anything. I don't know. But listen, what the Gemara is talking about over here is, let's say a guy is a meshumad. He doesn't believe in the Torah. And by accident, he ate treifus. And then he says, oh, I act. So when Mashiach comes, he's going to say, okay, what I did on purpose, fine. But what I did by mistake, I should bring a carbon. That person is potter from bringing a carbon. Because when he did an Aveira, he didn't care about it. So even when they told him, oh, by accident you ate treifus, he said, when he knew about it, he didn't regret what he did. So therefore, he would not be obligated to bring a carbon. That's this idea of when they make the kazayas smaller. So that's what the Gemara says. The Brisa said that we are afraid that they will increase the shiurim. But you just told me your pre-teretz, your original teretz was that maybe they're going to make the kazayas smaller. So that's what does it mean? Yarbe b'shiurim. They're going to increase the shiurim. No, shema yarbe b'karbonis machash shiurim. We thought that the Brisa meant to say that they'll increase bringing karbonis in the Beis Hamikdash because they made the shiurim smaller. But that's not the case. The case is that you should always keep a journal and write down that if you ate treifus, you should write down what olive you ate. If you ate the green one, because if you ate the medium-sized olive, write that down, because in case Mashiach comes and they say that you don't have to bring a carbon because the new olive was the big one, so you'll know that I don't have to bring a carbon. Rabbi Yochanan said, Shiurim v'oinshin halach l'moshe Sinai. The shiurim, what the size of different things and the punishments that come from halach l'moshe Sinai. For the Gemara, oinshin punishments. The Torah says if you eat treifus, you eat nevelas, you get malchus, michtav ksiv. That's written in the Torah. This is what Rabbi Yochanan meant. Shiurim shel oinshim. You remember, Rabbi Yochanan holds even chatzi shiur is aser, but to shiurim, to be punished for malchus or misa, that's halach l'moshe Sinai. The punishment is written in the Torah. The Torah doesn't say what size you get the punishment for. Tanya Nami Hacha, we learned in a brisa. Shi'urin shel oinshim, the amount for a punishment, that's halacha l'memshina. Acherim Omer Acherim say bezdin shel yabitz tiknum. That was the bezdin of Asniel ben Kenaz, and that bezdin made up the rule of what shiurim are. They gave the sizes. So the Gemara says, how could a Navi come and make up the new sizes of the Chumash? The Torah says, Eila ha-mitzvahs, she'ein ha-navi rashoy l'chadish davim ata. No Navi can tell you a new halacha, a new din, a new mitzvah. The Torah is, when it was given to Har Sinai, it's a closed book. There's no adding or subtracting from it. So how could Acherim say that the bezdin of the Yabetz made up the shiurim? Ella, the answer is shachocham. For a long period of time, they forgot what the shiurim of the Torah was. Nobody remembered it. The Chazru, with their insight, they turned it around via Sodom, and they gave the established. But really, it came from Har Sinai. It was just forgotten. Next, Hashoysa Malay Lugma. The Gemara said, the Mishnah says that in order to be Mechayev and Yom Kippur, you have to drink what? A cheekful. So the Gemara says that Lugma means 2 cheekfuls. You have to fill up both cheeks. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Loy Malay Lugma Mamish. It doesn't mean you fill up both cheeks. Ella, it has to be like this. That means if you put enough liquid in your mouth and you stick it all to one side, but if someone looks at you from a certain angle, they think that you have 2 cheekfuls, that's the amount. So again, it's a one-sided cheekful, but it has to be so big that if you look at you from one side, it looks like you have both cheekfuls. So there's like an optical illusion. So the Gemara says, but didn't we learn in our Mishnah that it has to be 2 cheekfuls? It seems that both cheeks need to be full to be mechayev on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, Ema kim loy luglav. What the Mishnah means to say, almost 2 cheekfuls. It has to look like 2 cheekfuls, but really it's 1 cheekful that looks like 2 cheekfuls. And I guess why the Mishnah says that, because if Mishnah would just say, put in 1 cheekful, you might think a little bit, as much as a little bit that fills up a little bit of your one side cheek. But what the Mishnah wants to say, that you fill up that one side of a cheek so big that it looks like someone looking at you from an angle thinks both cheeks are full. Now, by the way, that shear is a little bit less than 3 ounces, than a revius. Okay, that's a revius. It's a little bit less. So meisvei, we have a brisa that says, "Kama yishta." How much does a person have to drink on Yom Kippur? Ve'echayev, and then he's obligated. He did an avera. Beishamai says revius. You have to drink a revius. Beis Hillel, I'm a malay lomov. So Beis Hillel says, it seems to Beis Hillel saying 2 cheekfuls, and Rabbi Yehuda, I'm a b'shim Rab Laza kim loy luglav, almost 2 cheekfuls, like 1 cheekful that looks like 2. So the word malay lugmav seems to be implied 2 cheekfuls. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira Omer Kedei Gemira, 1 gulp. He says 1 gulp. So looking at Beis Hillel, you see that he uses the language malay lugmav. You have to have 2 cheekfuls. So maybe how do you know the shear is 1 cheekful? Maybe the shear is 2 cheekfuls. The answer is mi adifim emastisin. Is this brisa any worse than our Mishnah? Daikimna, we say it doesn't mean 2 cheekfuls. Beis Hillel didn't mean 2 cheekfuls. It's kedei sheyira'eh. That as it's to be an optical illusion, it should look like 2 cheekfuls. So hachinami, this brisa also, Beis Hillel didn't mean 2 cheekfuls. It's kedei sheyira'eh. It should have an illusion that you have 2 cheekfuls, but really it's 1 cheekful. So then the Gemara asks the obvious question: if Beis Hillel holds 1 cheekful and it should look like 2 cheekfuls, then in Haki Hainu Rab Lezer, isn't that what Rab Lezer says? Rab Lezer uses the word kimloy lugmav. So kimloy lugmav, I can understand, could mean an optical illusion, but 1. But malloy lugmav should mean 2. So isn't that the same? No. So Gemara says they all hold 1 cheekful. But Ika Benayu, there's a big difference between Beis Hillel and Rab Lezer. I should say big difference, a small difference. Malloy lugmav dachuk. That means just about a malloy lugmav. According to the Beis Hillel, you need to have it has to look like a real big, super big one-side cheekful. According to Rab Lezer, it doesn't have to be so popped out. It can be a little bit deflated. Both hold it's 1 cheekful. According to Rab Lezer, it's a little bit deflated. According to Rabbi Beis Hillel, it's even bigger than that. Really, on the side, really popping out, but it's only one cheekful. So the Gemara says, so Beis Hillel holds less than a revius. And Beis Shammai says, in order for you to be obligated on Yom Kippur, you have to eat a revius. So Beis Shammai says, let's say 3 ounces, and Beis Hillel says less than 3 ounces, a little bit less. So who is more lenient? Beis Shammai, because Beis Shammai says you're not chayiv kares unless you drink a revius. So maskala Rabbi Shayim can't have a lemekule beshamrei mechumrei Beis Hillel. Then this is one of the cases that should be counted as a leniency to Beis Shammai and a strictness to Beis Hillel. Because and we don't see normally Beis Shammai is the stricter one and Beis Hillel is the lenient one. And here I have a case where Beis Shammai is more lenient than Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says Amalei. So they answered back to him. They answered back to Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Right? He says we go to Amar Sheni, Pei Amar Sheni. Ki itchel, okay, ba'oig melech haboshan itchel havelei Beis Shammai lechumra. It's possible, that's what the Gemara means. It's possible to have Beis Hillel much more stricter than Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says the shear on Yom Kippur is rabias. But according to the Beis Hillel, it's a cheekful, one cheekful. But on a normal person, you're right. One cheekful is very less than a rabias. But it's possible that you have a giant of a person like Oig Melech HaBoshan, and his cheekful is larger than a couple of revias. His cheekful could be a couple of revias size. So in that case, that scenario, Beis Hillel is the lenient one. For a giant of a person, you have to drink more than a revias. So since there's cases where Beis Hillel is more lenient than Beis Shammai, it's not an absolute case of where Beis Shammai is always lenient and Beis Hillel is strict, because I can have this machloikis come out where Beis Hillel will be the lenient one and Beis Shammai will be the chumrah, the havelei Beis Shammai l'chumrah. Now the Gemara asks a couple of interesting questions about the chemistry in a person's body. The Gemara is asking, my scholar Rab Zera. Rab Zera said like this: you tell me that in order to make you not be angry, for eating the shear is for everybody the same, the date. But drinking, that depends on who you are. One cheekful of a person. So maskif lo Rab Zera, maishna achila. Why is the body, the human body, different? By food, you say the chol chad v'chad b'kaseves. Every person, by eating a date, they become very relaxed, right? Their mind settles down. Umaishna by shtia, by drinking, it takes more than that. The chol chad v'chad b'didei. Everybody has their own shear. Some people, depends the size of your cheek. If you have a big cheek, it takes you longer to set. That means you have to drink more to be mechayev to settle down. And if you have a small cheek, you get a less of a shear. So why is it that different? Amalei Abaya. Abaya says, and this is it. Kim lehu rabbanim. The rabbanim understood the human body. Their science understood the human body. B'kaseves, if you eat a date, the b'hachim miyat b'daitit, that will settle your mind. But less than a date, you're not going to feel, your mind is not going to settle. But b'shtia, by drinking is different. B'didei mas v'daitit. If you drink your own cheekful, then your mind will relax. But b'dechavre, if you have a friend who has a smaller cheek than you, and if you drink that, loy meis v'daitit, your mind is not going to be settled. So you're not going to feel settled. Maskiv lo Rab Zera. So again, the Gemara asks a question. Okay, take 2 people in shul. One guy is an 8-footer, and one guy is a short man. They both can have the same shiur to eat on Yom Kippur. That means that they both chayiv by eating a date. How is that possible? Maskiv lo Rab Zera v'chol oilam kula b'kaseves v'oig melech haboshan b'kaseves. That oig melech haboshan, everybody eats a date, they become relaxed. If you're a big person like oig melech haboshan, your mind will become settled by just eating one date. Abai said it's true. Science will tell you that. Even if you're a giant of a person, your mind will feel settled. But with a date, less than that, your mind is not going to feel settled. The date works for everybody. But there's a difference. Kuli Alma, the whole world that eats a date, tuva. That means they eat the date, their mind feels settled for a longer period. Let's call it for 20 minutes. They'll feel very happy by eating the size of the date. But oig melech habasham Purta, he'll have less time. In other words, he'll eat a date, his mind is going to relax, but it's not going to relax for 20 minutes, it'll last for 5 minutes. But still, the mind settling down works the same shi'ur for everybody. Maskif lo Rab Zera says, okay, it depends what you eat. Again, Basa shaman, if you eat a keto diet, if you have fat meat, right, bikasevis, then eating a date, you'll feel relaxed. But velulev gefonim, if you eat grape leaves, right, bikasevis, also eating this date size of grape leaves, will that make you feel relaxed? It depends what kind of food you eat. That's not true. Again, Abaya says it does not depend what kind of food. Science, the Rabbanan knew. Abaya says, Kim Luhu Rabbanan, the Rabbanan understood the science of a human body. No matter what you're going to eat, it's the same size. Even if you eat grape leaves or prime rib, the Bahaki Meis Vidaita, that's the amount that will settle your mind. Bitzer Mehaki Loy Meis Vidaita, less than that is not going to settle your mind. Meal, but Basar Shaman, if you eat fatty meat of steak, tuva, then your mind will settle down for a longer period of time. Again, maybe 20 minutes. But lulev gafon, if you eat grape leaves at the size of a date, purta, it'll make you feel relaxed, but maybe for a short period of time, maybe for 5 minutes. One more piece, two more questions. Maskif lo Rava. Rava said, asked another question. Now, we know, let's say, when you eat matzah on Pesach night, you have to eat it in this, let's say, 3 minutes. Kazayas has to be eaten, a matzah, in a period of time. Otherwise, that's not called eating. So how much of the date do you have to eat? So a date is larger than an olive, and yet they both have the shi'ur of achilas pras, of eating it in a certain period of time. How could that be? Why is this time period of eating the same for a kazayas, the same as eating a date? That's the question. Maskif lo Rava. Kazayas, eating a kazayas. Let's take an example. Kazayas, eating an olive on Pesach night, right? The shiur of eating that kazayas has to be done b'chtei achilas pras. Has to be done, let's say, in 3 minutes. Okay? And the kisebes, eating on Yom Kippur a date, in order, and a date is bigger than a zayas, you still have the same period of time, b'chtei achilas pras, of eating it in that time period. How could the time periods be the same if the size of the food is different? Amalei Abaye said the same thing. Kim lu Rabbanan. Rabbanan understood the science of a body. Although you're eating a larger size, you must eat it in a shorter period of time in order to feel that relaxed mind. The Bahachi Meis Vedati. If you eat a date in the 3-minute time span, that will make your mind feel relaxed. But if you eat it longer than that time span of achilas pras, loy meis v'daita, your mind's not going to feel settled. Again, the shir on Yom Kippur is eating a date. Eating a date b'chdei achilas pras in about 3 minutes. That's it. And the Chazal understood the science of the human mind, that if you eat that shir, your mind is going to feel settled. Now, the Gemara asked, Maskif lo Rava. Rava asked the question. Let's skip this line. We just said that kesebes, a date, is chtei achilas pras. Okay, but chatzi pras b'chtei achilas pras. There's another halacha that the Rabbanan made up. Now, you normally, if you touch a sheretz, you become tamei. What happens? You eat tamei food. Min Torah, you don't become tamei. Midrabanan, the Rabbanan said you become a person who eats a tamei food has to go to the mikvah. Okay. Now, how much does he have to eat? Not a kazayas. 2 eggs. Chatzi pras means 2 eggs. A guy who eats 2 eggs, b'chdei achilas pras, in that 3-minute time span, only then does his body become tamei. How is that possible? I mean, if the shiur is 2 eggs, then the time span should be extended, not shortened. So, because by shortening the time span, you're telling the person that he's not tamei until he eats it within that time span. If he ate it longer, then he's not tamei. So how could Chazal have the same time span for a shiur of 2 eggs, which is larger than a zayas, larger than a date? So the answer is Amalei Rapapa, Hanach L'tuma Gvia, being mitama by eating the lav deraisa. That's not deraisa. So therefore, Chazal could say and make this shiur, and they went very lenient on these type of halachas of eating tamei foods when you become tamei. So the Gemara says, how's that possible? Isn't eating tamei foods written in the Torah that makes you tamei? Mi Amar Papi Hachi, did Papi say something like this? But the pasuk says, don't eat the sheratzim or shkatzim. Don't become tamei by eating them. Vinit mesim bam, and you will remain tamei. So the Torah seems to imply that if you eat shratzim, you do become tamei. The Amar Rav Papa said, "Mekan shetumas gvia dairaisa." By eating tamei foods, and your body becomes tamei min haTorah. So the Gemara says, no. Rav Papa, who said that, was just trying to give clout to what he was saying, but he didn't mean it. Really, the whole idea is midrabanan. A human person cannot become tamei by eating food. It's only drabanan. Ukra asmachta ba'alma. The pasuk is just a peg where you hang it, but it's not really the source. The source is made up with the rabbanim. This pasuk just says, don't eat tamei foods because if you do tamei things, Hashem is going to allow you to do other tamei things. But that's not what the Torah is trying to tell you.
You know, Bernard, it's amazing, Chazal, the way you're talking about ease of mind. It's not so much because we talk about an 8-foot person as opposed to a 5-foot person. It really has to do with, like, satiety. Most of the time has to do with the blood sugar going up, and the chemistry of a person is the same. So if your chemistry goes up a certain, the sugar goes up a little bit, whether it's a 5-foot person or 8-foot person, they're going to be satisfied. There is something with fat because it could satisfy, it goes into the stomach to become satisfied, but basically most of the time it has to do with the blood sugars, and I think that's what they meant.
Right. No, I don't want to use the word satisfy. Satisfy is the size of an egg. Settling your mind, yasva daite, the Gemara says, that your mind will not feel anxious or whatever that is.
Right. Well, again, I don't know how, if you're feeling anxious, it has to do with blood. A lot of times it has to do with blood sugar. If someone's hypoglycemic, they're getting very anxious.
Right. Yeah. So that's that. Chazal understood that it's the date size for everybody.
Right.
And now I'm going to throw out a question for anybody who wants to answer this question. What's the shiur for liquids to settle your mind? 1 cheekful, right? So if you think about it, you have Knai Nahara, all your teeth. So your cheekful is this size. What happens? A person gets older and he loses his teeth. So therefore his cheek holds more. So his shiur was going to grow with him because the teeth are displaced by water now. So are you telling me that his mind changes? Something to think about.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night.